right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to the Between the Points podcast. And we are here with Paul Dale. Paul, welcome to the show. And I'm so grateful that you were able to make it all the way from Thailand, right? Am I in the right
Yep,
place?
that's right. That's right. Thanks, Greg.
Awesome. So I've been following your stuff for a while, right? I'm trying to remember. I was like thinking earlier, like how long ago did I start following Paul's, posts and like his blogs, and I couldn't remember. It's been that long.
Yep.
So I'm so glad that we're able to chat now. So if you don't mind, let's get right into it. What's the 3 a.m. method?
All right. It's probably where it all came together. So I ended up in Thailand when I was quite young, and I got into coaching national teams and things there, which is, I guess, where I was always heading anyway.
Mm.
But Thailand made it easier, and I began coaching national teams probably around 30 years old,
Wow.
and Davis Cup captain and Fed Cup captain at 30. So I was very young.
Wow.
But the 3 a.m. thing came about after several years. And obviously, when you're working with really good competitive players, you're always looking for an edge, how to train them, how to make them better. And we were on a trip one time, and we had traveled up to the north of Thailand in an old train. It had taken, something like 12, 15 hours or something. It was a sleeper, but we had got there about, 5 in the morning, and we had a practice booked at 7 in the morning. So I was beat. And so anyway, I found myself, had the players out on the court. I had a men's and women's team, and I had the players out on the court. And I hardly ever do this, but I was wearing dark glasses in the morning, which is not a good sign for me. And I was pretty much falling asleep. And it's funny because one of my most profound moments happened at that time. So that we had a woman player who later became number 19 in the world, and
Hmm.
her name was Tamarine Tunasugan, and she was playing in front of me and hitting the ball as clean and as good as she ever had.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking, first thought was, I'm glad I'm not a player anymore because I don't think I could actually go out and do that. But then as I looked at it more and more, I began to see that she was doing it. She had clicked in to her job quicker than anyone else. And we had some good players in the team.
What do you mean job?
So,
Sorry.
sorry.
Clicked into her what?
Well, into her work. I mean, timing, shot selection,
Okay.
just didn't miss a beat.
Hmm.
It was as good as she could do.
Hmm.
She was plugged in. And anyway, so after that session, I began to think a lot about what I was seeing that day, that morning. And what I realized was that most of the really good players I had been coaching could all do that. They seemed to be able to play their best tennis anytime, anywhere, any place, any pair of shorts, any balls, any court surface. They could just do it. And I began to think, if I could figure out how to actually train that, not just observe it, but train it on the court, that I would be sort of like the super coach. If I could work that out, that's the magic elixir of talent. So anyway, over I guess years, I began to formulate a system of training that did actually train that ability. And why I call it the 3 a.m. methodology or theory is that the standard for 3 a.m. tennis is that you could be woken at 3 a.m., the worst time and probably in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning, taken to a court, lights go on, play a very good opponent, and everything is working.
Hmm.
The four pillars, technically, mentally, strategically, physically, you can do it.
Mm.
And I call it sometimes cold tennis. You can do it cold.
Mm.
And what I see now after a while of training this way is the correlation between players that I have that can go in and win big points at the right moments and win tie breaks. And yeah, so that's where the term 3 a.m. came from. It's basically that standard of can you do it at 3 a.m. in the morning, anytime, any place, any type of ball, any surface, any.
Got it. So how do you do it?
Okay, so what this is where I think what this brings up is that I think fundamentally tennis around the world is trained incorrectly.
Mm.
And I have a few reasons why it is. It's not totally that everybody's incompetent, and I'm not going to be arrogant and say that. But what I think happens is that in coaching a lot, we get a student and we feel that if they can't do something, then we need to make it easy for them to do it in the belief that they will gain confidence and be able to do it after that.
Mm.
And it's my belief that actually you do the opposite. You you submerge the player into unpredictability, shot selection chaos,
Mm-hmm.
stress, all those things, and constructing points and finishing points constantly.
Mm.
And so when they go into matches, you have built the bridge from practice to match. And that the other way of doing it, let's say the other 95% of the way tennis is taught, is in comfort. And I call confidence, for example, a placebo effect. That confidence can be taken into a match, but is very quickly lost if all those other elements, the ability to play in unpredictable situations under pressure, and the right shot patterns and all that, if that hasn't been tested under the fire, then it's not going to last, no matter how good you feel. And it's like, as an example, there's many examples, but an example would be basket feeding, 500 forehands down the line. Now, that has no relevance to a match at all because the 500 forehands they are predictable. You've already planned where they're going to go. There's no stress. There's no scoring or match involved, and there's no real pressure to that. It's repetition, but I also believe repetition up until a point is a placebo, unless it's repetition under pressure. And in that sense, you've probably heard of this term myelin, which is
What?
this substance, myelin, which is it's a if you open up
How do you spell that?
a Myelin.
Myelin. Okay.
Yeah. Now it's a very interesting thing because it's basically the talent maker. It's worth reading about because what it is as a species, maybe thousands of years ago, if we weren't able to run from danger like I don't know, a lion or whatever, if we couldn't flee danger and shoot up a tree in a few seconds and do it very quickly multiple times, we died. And so eventually we have this system inside us that means that if we repeat something many times, what you'll find is the neurological pathways, let's say that forehand down the line, the neurological pathways will be coated with myelin, and it becomes
Mm.
like a super conductor of information to help us
Mm.
survive.
Mm. That's really
Now
interesting.
now if you do it 500 times a day, you'll be coating myelin. but it'll be nothing near the myelin you coat if you had a guy with a gun at the sideline saying, if you miss this, I'm going to. So
Please tell me you haven't done.
myelin,
Have you did that? Have you done that to a player yet?
no, I will shortly though, but
Oh
if,
my God, that would be just oh my. I can only
but
imagine.
under pressure, myelin is created in much more quantities and in much more effective ways.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, myelin is great,
Yeah.
done with repetition, which could be a basket.
Hmm.
But when you put it under pressure, it builds much more, much more.
When is it
That's
appro
why, yeah,
sorry to interrupt. When is it
no,
appropriate to do 500 balls from a basket? Is there a time
uh,
that it is appropriate?
no, I don't feel there is anymore.
Okay.
Having sort of evolved this system,
Interesting.
I think there's a certain point. Like my lessons will
Mm.
normally involve, let's imagine I'm trying, and we're going to talk about ground later, I hope.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
So,
I think
I
I'm
have a
starting to see
technique.
it.
Yeah, if I have a player who needs to be trained in ground, I may provide that certain width of ball to instigate a certain part of this footwork technique.
Hmm.
I might need that exact ball, and I
Hmm.
might need it, 10 or 12 times,
Hmm.
but I don't need it 500 times, and especially not the second day and the third day.
Yeah.
So once I have shown the player the technical part of it, what the exercise is about. You're trying to do this for this result, and it's all going to be good. Then I immediately put it under pressure.
Hmm. How do you do that? How do you
Immediately.
put pressure on them?
Well, it can be those 12 balls, but very shortly after, we would probably bring in a certain drill. Let's imagine it's a wide forehand.
Yes.
We would bring in a certain drill that they got multiple wide balls, but best of all, unpredictable because it's coming from another player. So they're in a
Hmm.
drill and that wide ball's coming from them. So it's going to be slightly short, sometimes slightly deeper,
Hmm.
slightly not as wide as you thought it would be, or
Hmm.
very wide and all that. So yeah, the unpredictability has to go in there immediately. And
Nice.
what you're actually saying to them, which I think is a lot better way, is to say this technique will work for everything out on that side, but you have to adapt to it. Do the
Hmm.
technique, and the technique must adapt to the certain balls.
Yeah.
If I was to do the 500 ball type of scenario, I have actually locked them in a box for that ball. And of course, the first thing that happens in a point in a match is that they don't get that quite the same ball, and it's like, what the heck is this? And there's a bit of confusion.
Yes.
And the talented 5%, I call them the talented 5%, can bridge that gap of being told something and then adapting it to real life situations.
Hmm.
But the majority of us, me included,
Okay.
tend to learn something and we don't quite adapt it like that 5%.
Hmm.
And I have a theory that a lot of the top players in the world today are in that 5%. They have been able to take, in a lot of cases, quite poor coaching, but just being out on the court and experiencing the bounce of the ball and points and playing a lot of tournaments is certainly the best thing.
Hmm.
That they have naturally just found ways to adapt their game and become very strong.
Yes. What do you think makes them the 5%? What helps them become the 5%?
Okay, it's I think they do bridge that gap from practice to match. That's the blinking light that I see.
Hmm.
They can go from a practice session with a group of 12 and then that one person goes to the match and there's no hiccup. It's
Hmm.
even probably better. And for me, what that is, we get now to a slightly different topic, which is mental. The mental aspect of tennis to me is 90%. You're into that. Yeah, I know you are. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
I
love
think
it. I
we've
love the
seen
mental side of the game. It's just,
yeah, we've seen enough of players to know that it's huge.
mhm. Yes, I'm a believer about belief. I believe that when you believe, that's when the magic happens. When you
Mm.
believe, and there's different tricks that or not tricks, different strategies and skills and tools we can use to create that belief in us because it's in there. Um, how did you start tennis? How did you get into tennis?
I think a club reopened. There was a club in Recess near my home, and
Mm-hmm.
at about 10 years old, my mother said, "Well, there's a tennis club reopening
Mm-hmm.
down the road. Would you like to give it a try?" I was playing all sports. I was sort of a jack of all trades at that point, but it loved sport. And so she had an adult friend down the road who picked me up one day, one evening, went to the courts, and basically was on a tennis court for the rest of my life. I just got
Oh,
hooked, loved it.
that's awesome. So your
Yeah,
your mom got you into it.
yeah.
Cool. Was she a tennis player?
Yeah, I think she did play a bit, but the funny thing is, I come from a country where I would say almost every boy, it's a little different now, I think, than when I grew up. But when I was growing up, every boy played rugby, and there was no question of it, and everything else was secondary to rugby.
Hmm.
And so, um, for me to get absolutely hooked on this summer sport was a bit weird. But I continued to play rugby, but tennis just grabbed me for some reason. I think it was the fact that tennis is like ballet to me a lot. It's a dance. It's a rhythm, and it's just beautiful. They call football the beautiful game. Some of these footballers should play tennis. I think a few of them actually do and like it a lot. But
I saw.
tennis,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. I saw like
Well, tennis has
Maradona or
this
something playing.
athleticism. Hmm?
I saw Maradona. I saw a video clip. I think Maradona, the guy from Argentina, the really great soccer player, and
I
he
think
like what
Ronaldo, right?
Ronaldo or
Ronaldo.
yeah, one of those. Yeah, those that guy. And there's another guy that was. Anyways, he
Oh,
like kicked up the ball, like the tennis ball, and then like boom, boom, kicked it up, and then took it to the baseline and hit a serve. It was like whoa.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
cool. Um, tell me your experience coaching the Davis Cup, right?
yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that happened really early, and I was really grateful. So I ended up in Thailand. Uh, I was working at a resort sort of hotel there in the beginning, but I loved the country. As soon as I landed in Thailand, I just loved it. I loved the people, the culture. It was just really cool. The temples and the klongs, the riversides with the boats, it was just different to anything I'd ever experienced. But I just loved it. So I eventually started to coach some of the better players in the country, and they were Davis Cup players. So the next step was the association said, can you? And I think I'd already been there 3 years, which in those days qualified me to be captain, sit in the court. So that's how I sort of began, and I did the Federation Cup team as well. But we had some quite interesting experiences because most of our ties were within the Asian region, and we would trips to Pakistan and India and all sorts of places, Philippines and Indonesia, and it was really cool.
Can you share us one memory or two memories from that experience that stick with you to this day?
Yeah, well, you might like this one because
Hmm.
it's a little bit of the mental thing that I sort of gravitated into about
Hmm.
those days. So we were in Iran, And by that time, we had had a really good player come along in our team, Paradon Sichapan, who became 9 in the world at one point. And he wasn't at this tie. I think he'd already began to get pretty deep into ATP tournaments and stuff. So for this tie, he didn't come. But we had a guy called Danai Udomchok, who later became 72 in the world. And so obviously really good too, but he sort of turned up and he was our number one now. And I think Iran basically thought, well, Sichapan's not with them. It's going to be a cakewalk. And we were playing them at home, and we're on clay, which isn't our best surface. And the tennis center in Iran is Tehran is it's like sunken. It's like the ground level, but the courts seem to have been dug into the earth, and so you actually walk down into courts, and it's a bit like a Roman amphitheater. Really, it's quite cool. And anyway, we began this tie, and their number one or something was playing this our player Danai Udomchok, and he was just hitting the ball out of. He was just teeing off on everything, and everything was going in. And the more winners he had, he must have had like 50 friends in the crowd, and they were all at the fence side banging on the tin every time he hit a winner. And Denai looks at me and I look at him, and this guy was on fire. I mean, he could have won Wimbledon the way he was playing. He was just smacking everything. He was built like a bull, and everything was going in that day. So anyway, the players would change ends, and at one point, I have this theory that I use, which is a theory of opposites. So if a guy likes a fast ball, you give him slow. If he likes a high ball, you give him low. Basically opposites. And as I sat there, I thought, wait a minute, what's going on here? This guy is full of hot air. What's the opposite of this? And I thought, I imagined a balloon in front of me, a balloon that was full of air, and with more air, it might burst. And so as he was coming to sit down, he had to change past behind the umpire chair. I got up and I sort of walked towards him. I began to, basically applaud him, and I just shook my head. And he was sort of shocked. He looked at me and he thought, wow, I must be playing unbelievable. Not only have I got the crowd on their feet making noise, the captain of the other team is now applauding me on the changeovers. And I mean, it just switched the whole thing. He went back out. There was a bit of a rally. He smacked a forehand. It landed a meter behind the baseline. Hey, no problem. He'll get the next one in. No, the next one probably hit the back fence. Next one hit the net or whatever. The match was basically over from that point. So that was, I mean, Davis Cup can be a lot of stress and that, but boy, it's fun too. It's sort of pressure, high pressure, but high reward.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I saw the whole thing. Beautiful. Uh, is that like that's like, as a coach, are you always thinking like ways to get you? So you're always thinking of ways to get the edge, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Nice. And in competition, it's competition, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
I think, Greg, you were mentioning the blog before, and
Yes.
that
Let's talk
sort
about
of
that.
brings up this point that the blog originated quite a few years ago, and I never really worked on it that much. But the
Hmm.
reason for it was I would sometimes be on a court and I would teach something, and I'd go, "Damn, that's quite good," and then I'd remember, wait, I did that before once. I saw this thing and I did this sort of myriad of um, things to cure it. And then I think, wait a minute, I did that once before. And then I began to realize sometimes it was 3, 5 years ago. And I realized that this isn't so good because I could be actually coming up with some really good stuff, but not recording it. So it's going in, yes, that day I'm magic, but then in a week or so, I would have forgotten the little piece that I got right for that particular. So I thought, I'll write it down. And then these things called blogs were a bit of a flavor of the year then. So I began to write in this blog, but never send it out anywhere. Just start to record it, and then it got into such a habit. You talk about, I'm looking at details or ways to win all the time. Well, what I do now, and I wrote one today even, is that I get on the court and I just sort of see something that I often, I always want to sort of figure out, okay, how do I fix that, or how do I approach that, or how do I deliver that, or whatever it be. And I'll think, that's a blog. And I always have a notebook, and you know, I always have it with me. And I've got about probably 15 of them over the years of these notebooks. I write everything all day long. So I'll put in a basic concept I've just found and a little star beside it, which means that this is a blog. Go back and expand it. And I've just written one today, as I say, and yeah, it was based on the court this morning. So
I love
I
it.
tend to think of a lot of things, but luckily I have a system of actually recording them. So while the blog looks like hard work, for me it's actually it's a therapeutic type of thing because I know I'll never lose it. And I think I've got about 220 blog posts now.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. Um, Great job on that. And there's I've read several of your blog posts, many of your blog posts, and I'm always just like sinking it in. There's just information. So if you're out there listening, I would encourage you to check out Paul's blog. There's gold there. Um, what's a characteristic of a champion?
All right. I'm working with two right now. I would say, the champions in mindset. One woman has won 10, 10 international tournaments this year out of 13. And that includes, she's actually quite good, but she's past 30 now, and she doesn't go out of the country much. So she enters into 15,000s and 35,000s and stuff, but wins them. And we have another woman who's 105 in the world, another we'll call champion, and they're both about the same, but one doesn't go out much. So I what I see or what I feel like if you're talking or there's a young person or a parent of a young player that they'd like to be good, there's just this thing in those sort of players where hitting a ball, they can become absorbed in it because if you can't get that quality, you're not going to get the volume. I mean, the thing is, this morning, for example, the players, this is the women's team I'm talking about for time. They come on the court, and this is like I would say 105 right now, plus the other woman had been 171. So they come on the court, and then the ball goes away. It goes, and it doesn't stop. And the enthusiasm for hitting that ball doesn't fluctuate.
Hmm.
It's like zoned in. And I don't see that in other players.
Hmm.
And, I've spent a lot of time. at tournaments on the ATP tour as well. And I remember at one point during the European indoor season, we seemed to be on the same practice court as Medvedev. And that was just before he was already pretty good, but he went higher after that as well. But I remember saying, yeah, they all have the same thing. They just, and I guess this is a bit of the 3 a.m. thing. You know, again, they can just walk onto a court and bang, they're up to 100%. The focus, the consistency, the adaptability on different balls, it's all plugged in. So the qualities of champion, I think you've got to have the ability to hit thousands and thousands of balls over the next 10 years. Thousands and thousands of them, if not 1,000 a day. Yeah, you've got to have that. And then I mentioned 4 pillars: the technical, the physical, mental, and strategic. And the way I think players have to be, I think what we miss also is that we don't put those 4 elements into lessons very much. We tend to be lopsided on the technical part, in the belief that if the forehand can go in, then the player will find a way to make it good and become a good player. And I always now create a strategic part to every lesson, which might be, go back to that wide forehand. Why do we need a wide forehand? Because there could be a certain amount of defense needed. So that lesson should include them defending wide on the forehand, and what comes back, what height it is, what depth it is, what angle is on it. Every technical part needs a strategic part. The mental part can come through the unpredictability of it. You might go wide forehand on a feed or whatever, but if it drops short, they need to strike down the line pretty early in the rally today. So, they need to be able to see that, recognize that. That's the decision-making part of tennis. So, what are the qualities of great players? It's just they've got all those 4 chiming in nicely.
Interesting. The question that was popping in my head was, how do we do that? Like, what do you do? What kind of like you say, you strategic, right? So what kind of drills are you doing in order to practice that strategy part of it? What are you doing to practice the technical part of it? What are you doing to
All
practice
right.
the
Yeah.
other,
So I think
maybe
there's
just
all
one or
sorts
two
of
drills?
yeah, there's all sorts of different drills and stuff you do, but it may be more also the drill and when you do it. So what I do often is I will players will walk. I had a little young junior development squad in the evenings tonight. I had the squad, and what we often do is we enter the court, we warm up a little bit, and then we go immediately into complicated drills. Complicated drills that I'm standing out the back, and it's all generated by them. Things like, for instance, a very simple drill. Well, we could start. Let's imagine we start with a drill. I'll give you 3 that could be coordinated all together in a sequence. The first one could be let's imagine you and I. We go 2 balls cross court, and you change on the 3rd down the line. We go 2 balls backhand. You change backhand down the line. Da 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 da. I have my turn of changing. So we go into that, but do it early. Don't go. This is my suggestion. Don't go 40 minutes into warming up everything, volley, and then start drills for specifics. I think you've got to test things cold, without warning, cold. So maybe after that, you're going the simple cross-court down the line drill. Now, I wouldn't do that for very long because it's too predictable. So then what I do with you and I would be say, okay, Greg, you're going cross court, I'm going down the line, but play the point. So I know where you're going, you know where I'm going, but it's a point. So you're going to have who's going cross court? You are going. So you're going to have a slight advantage if you're going cross court on me. I'm going to get my chance later, but you begin to learn to take advantage of this whole cross court formation effectively. If you go down the line, you're going to start to learn to, balance is required a little better. You're going to have to, do certain things. Your target has to change. So we do it in a point situation, and then we score it, and then we swap. And it's a very simple concept, but we've put the players under pressure. They're learning cross court and down the line. There isn't really nothing else in tennis apart from cross court and down the line.
Yeah.
And we're doing it at stress under fast conditions, and then we score it. So we add pressure again, and we have decision making, shot selection. We may go underspin on some backhand where we've been pulled too wide or something, and we want to neutralize the opponent by putting it low or deep or whatever it is. So we're learning shot selection at the same time.
Awesome.
And then I would just to put a fourth one in there, I would throw them into points and observe all this. But what you'll begin to see very quickly after a very short time is that players can go into points and make good decisions and do it under pressure.
How much time are you
That
spending on serves and returns?
quite a lot because when we go into points, I'll begin the serve and return. So I have this is not my drill, but I heard it years ago, and I've just used it. It's the best I've found. I'm the server, you're the returner. The coach gives you, say, the tee on the ad side, and you have to return down the line. My first ground stroke goes to a certain direction. So we go 1, 2, 3, the first three shots. And we do it over and over again. And then we can maybe add the pieces, play it out. So we go 1, 2, 3, play it out. Now, the thing is that another theory I like to work with based on this 3 a.m. methodology is that there has to be consequences, because I know as a junior, my practice sessions were knock, 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 play a few sets. And then I went to a tournament, and suddenly my first rally, I made a mistake. Now in practice, we just said, oh, it was only out by an inch, carry on. The goal was to keep the rally and the confidence going. But what I like to do is say, no, consequences, balls out, change. Another two will come in. And so, the consequences to everything, every mistake. So it's
Awesome.
not a shock when you go into a match.
Super cool. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Um, let's talk about the tank. What does it mean to empty your tank?
Or to empty the tank.
Yes.
All right. So I think if you'd read the blog, but I'll talk about it because it might make a bit more sense.
Yes.
So I was in my room recently, and I get this buzz on my smart watch, and someone's messaging me, boom, 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 just coming through one after the other. And I thought, well, who's this? So I went and had a look, and it's one of my players, and it was doubles in a pro tournament, and she was bitching about the opponent. Her partner. Didn't do this, didn't do that. What the hell's wrong with her? Next one. Moan, 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 moan. And I think she must have blew her negativity out. And then at the end, knowing she knew me, probably knew what I was thinking, she said, "Oh, I hate losing." And really, you could have deleted all the other messages. It really was down to that. She cannot lose matches. So what I often encounter are players, and they never become that good are players who hit a snag, a difficult situation in a match, and they fold. And I think there's a lot of them. The champions don't fold ever. And those, let's call them the normal players, the average Joe out there, um, plays and something affects them. And that can often be the end of it. That's it. And the match is essentially over at that point. And the trouble with that is when you're a coach watching it, you don't really know. I mean, you know they're basically they're not playing very well now. You know their whole game's fallen apart, but they're not giving you any information because they're not digging in and literally emptying the tank. Like and the best players do that for me. I'm sitting there, and they I mean they could have played 3 weeks of 5 matches a week, and they did, and they're in a final, and they're playing someone really good, and they've hit a wall at the beginning of the second set, and they're in deep trouble. I mean, they're dying. Could be, especially here in Southeast Asia, it could be 35 degrees easily each match. So it's tough, and I see it, and they look at me, and I've actually said to a player once, um, you know, they've sort of walked past the fence to get their towel and looked at me, and I've said, "Do you still want to win?" And there's a hesitation. Yes. Okay, listen, let's do this, and on we go. But yeah, if a player can't empty their tank, you can't really see the essence of them. But a player who empties their tank, you know exactly where you're going the next week of training. It could be simply they ran out of gas in terms of they have no more physical. And you can't, there's a certain training point you can't get beyond. A lot of matches is a lot of matches. You can't do much about it. But often when they're dead tired, also you see what falls down, which pillar falls down, and it's normally mental, and it could affect shot selection, and then it could affect technique. But every mistake always comes from a mental basis first. That's my belief. Every mistake is a mental mistake originally.
I agree.
Yeah, even fatigue. Yeah,
Yes. Um, so yeah, these questions came from your blog for sure. And I just, yeah, um, I believe that they will be so powerful coming out of your actual physical like body and person. Like also, I would encourage everybody to read the actual blog posts because these were the top four that I looked up and you had linked up, right? And the
yeah,
next one is that I really want to talk, that not really, but would love to talk about, is what is Blue Elephant?
yeah. All right. I have to go back another story. A lot of these blogs come from stories, but I was in India once and I was coaching this young player, and he made a lot of errors. He had been brought to me. This boy makes errors and don't know why he does it, and he seems to lose focus and all this stuff. And we were playing at an end court at this club. Um, and at one point, I think his name was Goroff, and I called Goroff into the net. I said, Goroff, and if you understand Indian culture at all, they're very spiritual people. Very, the spirituality is huge in their culture.
Mm.
So I said to Goroff, I said, Goroff, um, there are 4,000 distractions that you could encounter in a match. And Goroff sort of was very respectful. The kids in Asia are very respectful. He sort of like mouth dropped and 4,000. And I, and I said, um, And I was, about to go through, and you've got to try and avoid da 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 da. All of a sudden, there was this huge monkey jumped on the fence beside us, and it had this long curly tail, and it was huge. And Goroff looked at the monkey, and I looked at the monkey, and the three of us, which was the monkey included, were sort of looking at each other, wondering what the next step was. And then I turned to Goroff and I said, Goroff, God has sent us 4,001 distractions. And after I said that, the jaw dropped, and it's like, my God, like this is profound. So yeah, that's so what I changed it to for juniors particularly is that I call it the blue elephant, and our standard is that if you're in a match and a blue elephant walked past your court, would your game stay the same, or are you totally distracted? And there was one boy just recently, Thai boy, who he wasn't very confident about himself, and he had actually had a break from tennis. His father had taken him out of tennis. It was too much crying, too much upset. It was stressful. And he had started back with me, and the strokes got better and everything got better. He didn't do very well in the next few tournaments, but we started to talk, and because he had no confidence in his game, and he got distracted and he got upset with calls, and he just everything upset him. So I began to talk to him about the blue elephant, and he loved this concept. He loved this idea, and he got it. He said, I understand this. And so during tournaments, I think he even sent me a note one tournament, and he said, no blue elephants, Paul, no blue elephants this time. And he ended up doing pretty
Oh.
well. He's had a runner up and a third and stuff like that. He's done a
Hmm.
lot better. But as I said in the blog, um, he went along to his next tournament, and we're on a real run now. And he's doing really well now. But we had a hiccup. He went to a tournament, and he was playing a match, and it rained, and they came off, and then they went back on, and then it rained again, and then they came off, and then he went back on, and it rained again. It rained 3 times in the match, and it was a seemingly a horrible match he played. Just things fell apart. But it was very handy for me to say, you didn't recognize the blue elephant, did you? And you go, oh, I said, the rain's the blue elephant. So basically, the blue elephant is anything that's going to derail your performance or your focus or your concentration.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
was awesome. I love that. That I can see the blue elephant. I see it.
No blue elephants in Chicago, I hope.
No, just purple dinosaurs.
Yeah. Well, you have to, yeah, that'll work.
That'll work too, right? Yeah. I tell my kids that sometimes when I'm trying to get them to like snap out of it, when they're yelling at each other. I'm like, hey, did you see the purple elephant? And they're like, what?
Here, where?
Yeah. Um, cool. Let's talk about ground fundamentals. Tell us something interesting about it.
All right. So this is basically I work with three fundamentals, and one of them is contact. I don't. It was told to me many years ago when I was quite young, starting coaching. The definition of a fundamental, and this may be wrong, but I feel it's very accurate, is that it cannot be taken out of the game. So that things such as backswing and follow through are not fundamentals because everybody's different, and you can play some shots with no backswing and some shots with no follow through. You can't play anything without any contact. So contact is a fundamental. Another fundamental is, in my view, spin, because you cannot hit a ball that is completely flat. Even though we talk about flat this, flat that, it's the ball rotates. Now, if you get a young or any player off the street who's never played tennis before, they will hit a ball and it will spin. But what we tend to do as we get better as a player is we use spin as an actual tool to dip the ball, create angles, and control it, and what have you. Make it bounce low, make it bounce high. So spin is a fundamental because you cannot take spin out of the ball. It will always rotate. And the beginner has haphazard spin, and the very advanced players have spin by design. And then the other third fundamental, it's a bit of a cheat one, is that in tennis, you need timing and you need to supply power. Now, I'll start with this, that if I had you, Greg, on a slippery, icy lake, and I was feeding you balls, you would have a lot of trouble swinging and hitting balls and staying on your feet, because ultimately every shot comes out of the sole of your foot. It's the interaction between the sole of your foot and the court. That's the leverage you need to create inertia. People talk about biomechanics and inertia and all this. It's nothing more than your connection to the ground. And if you become advanced with that, you will lift off on a lot of shots. Serve is one of the ones we do that. But, on big ground strokes, you often lift off the ground. And that's just advanced ground. So ground is your source of power and timing. You cannot time a ball without that interaction. So I have techniques. One of them is I call the contact foot, so that in most ground strokes you'll use one foot or the other. It could be a back foot, a front foot, an open stance or a closed stance. It doesn't really matter. Nature doesn't care. It just needs you to link to the ground to supply timing. And players who have poor ground are normally trying to swing or time balls with their arm, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Hmm. So you're saying the four fundamentals are, let me make sure I got this.
Three
Three?
fundamentals.
Three? There's three fundamentals. So you're saying spin, technique,
Contact,
contact,
yeah, and
and,
ground.
and ground. Oh,
Yeah.
spin, contact, and ground. So I understand spin, I understand ground, contact, maybe like how do we get the contact? There's
How do you mean? I'm not sure. How
there's
do we get it?
contact, right? Are you talking about just like on the ball when you're making contact with the ball?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The moment the ball strikes. So for me, the job of contact, I'll go now down into a secondary layer. So if those are the three fundamentals, the primaries. Okay, the first layer, but under contact, is that contact gives you direction and heights, nothing else.
Got it.
What you're probably thinking, wait a minute, what about if I want to spin the ball? So I have spin as one of the fundamentals. So it's not delegate. I don't. It's not. I'm not poo-harring spin. I'm saying that I teach spin only to supply direction and heights. That's it.
Okay.
Right, now let's move to spin. The secondary part of spin is that I would teach players both top spin and underspin. But if you have really good contact, then spin is quite easy because it's where you finish. So if you hit a flat ball and you finish with your hand high, let's say above your head, that creates topspin. And if you finish with your hand coming basically flattish, that's flat. And of course, if you open the racket face, that creates underspin. But Spin can be added very quickly with great contact because it's just the height of your finish. It's the finish of your racket. So we might. This is quite unusual, I know, but I'm only teaching. I'm only teaching contact for the two reasons of direction and height, but I only teach spin for top spin and underspin. Um, and then ground is the secondary is your timing and your power. If you want to create more power, you create more interaction. This is Newton's law, three laws. I think it's the third one of his, where action versus reaction equals reaction.
Whose law?
Isaac
Wow.
Newton's. Yeah. This is his action reaction thing. The more I push down into the earth, the court, the higher I jump.
Mm.
And similarly,
So you're
the more I
pushing
generate
down.
out of the ground, push off, the faster I can generate racket head speed at the ball.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Pushing down versus lifting up.
Well, you can't lift up without. So this is, yeah. See, you're
Interesting.
saying the same thing as me. You're just you're just skipping my one. You can't jump up without pushing down.
Right.
You see what I? So you actually you can teach a player. So if you go out on the court and teach a player to generate a bit more pace on the ball and get them maybe lifting off, you've done the same thing I would have done. I would have gone on the other court and taught the other player to interact with the ground, which would have had them lifting off.
Hmm.
And the spectator would say, Greg and Paul teaching the same thing.
That's interesting, right?
Hmm.
There's no
But I
wrong or
think
right way.
Greg, yeah, but Greg, when I
Well,
teach ground, I have the bonus of being able to also get them to understand timing because the timing of that push is basically the timing that you're sending the biomechanics through the body to the racket. They both happen at the same time.
I see. Yes. Interesting.
Hmm.
How we doing on time? How you doing?
I'm okay.
We're about
We've been
55
talking
minutes
for
in.
about 55 minutes, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, yes. So a few more. What is the 100-year-old truth?
All right, so that's Bill Tilden,
Okay.
who was a very prominent player in the 1920s. And Tilden wrote a book, Match Play and Spin of the Ball. It might have been, if not the first, yeah, no, it would be one of the first tennis books, but maybe not the first. But he was a very wise player. A lot of those guys back then were very smart. And I think, particularly in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, players are really smart back then. If you ever read Jack Kramer's The Game,
Hmm.
they did these tours of playing each other. Like it's a bit like Sinner and Alcaraz going on a 140 match tour. Now, what changed wasn't the two players. What changed was the circumstances. They would play on an ice skating rink with canvas rolled out. Some of them played on a main street of the city with a net strung up in the middle, some on a basketball court, and you can imagine you're not getting much look at the ball once it's come off the wood. But you imagine how smart they are. So back then, I've talked to a lot of those guys in the 60s, and a lot of them aren't around anymore. But when I was younger, I got to talk to a few of them, and they were just an actual treasure trove of information. Right from you're on a faster court, you build up your handle. They would talk about the string tension. So they would sort of turn up. They would jump in a van with a trailer at the back, which had a rolled up canvas court, and they would get to a city in the middle of the night, and they'd you know put up this court in the morning or not. They would play on the boards, and they would have a knock, and they would go back and they would tweak their strings and their grip sizes and their strategy and all that. Let's imagine one sideline was a bit close to one of the walls, you're gonna slice serve all night on that one, on that particular angle. They were really, really smart. So Bill Tilden, when he wrote his book, had one of the probably most common tennis quotes ever written. Never change a winning game, always change a losing one. You must have heard that, have you?
No, this is
No?
the first
Okay.
time.
Well,
This is the
yeah.
first time I'm hearing, but it's kind of like why change something that's working, right?
Well, we say that now, but that came from Tilden. Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, sometimes a coach might say to a player, never change a winning game, Sonny. Well, that came from Tilden. Tilden said, never change a winning game, makes all the sense in the world. Always change a losing one. Now, that's very rare. So, in today's tennis, especially junior tennis, when the kids hit the wall, that's it. They're out. I mean, there's no plan B, plan C, D. They can't think their way out of a problem.
Interesting.
Always change a losing one.
Interesting.
Mm.
Really cool. That is such a cool quote. Thank you so much for that. Yes. Oh my God, that's brilliant. I have a theory about just life in general, like technology and things and the clothes we wear and the buildings we're in, that changes, that evolves. What's the one thing that, well, I can't even say that, but what's the one I sometimes I wonder about this. What's the one thing that doesn't really change or does it change? But maybe, yeah.
Oh, you mean in tennis
In life and
specifically or
tennis
life?
and anything because life and tennis, what
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
change? Humans, doesn't change in a human experience?
I don't know. I mean, if you take on like Eastern philosophy, then there is nothing that doesn't change. Basically, they say life is change, and it might be something with tennis that I'm seeing now. For instance, when I started playing, and I'm probably you, Greg, we could have realistically become one of the top players in the world. Um, when I again talking to those players back then, many of them never went to a gym, so they were just like um, Joe normals down the street, and they could play pretty well. They were talented, but actually, the playing field was pretty level for guys like you and me coming into tennis. Yeah, there wasn't this big gap. Now today, that's completely different. I think society has polarized now, and that the elite players of our game, for someone to grow up and get to that level today is a lot harder because they train like, okay, scientifically, but the techniques are amazing. Their physical um, training is amazing. They're just super athletes. Um, Junior girls today could have beaten the male players of the 70s, I'm pretty sure. Like early 70s, maybe not mid, late.
Yeah.
But when you watch Wimbledon in the early 70s, I mean, tennis is actually, it was pretty atrocious when you compare junior girls' tennis today.
Yes.
So they would out hit the men in the 70s, in the early 70s.
Are
So
you
tennis,
excited
huh?
about Sabalenka versus Kyrgios?
No, no,
No.
no.
Okay. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you?
I think right now, online, what I my work now is pretty much it's for the association. It's it's what I really like to do. I now go into courts with local Thai coaches, good ones, and I can go in and add pieces, and the players know they've got someone that can give them a deep dive into their technique or their game or their mentality. So I'm sort of now, I'm always based in Thailand. I got a bit sick of traveling, so I don't really like to travel much anymore. And I'm trying to do a lot more players online. Like I have a player, a young girl in New York tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock when I wake up.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I have players that do come in now and again, but really I can do quite a lot now on the internet.
Cool. So kind of, I kind of want to go back to that question. What hasn't changed? Because I have a theory. The thing that hasn't changed, life evolves, life changes around us. The thing that stays fairly constant is thoughts. It's
Hmm.
what we're
Yes.
thinking. And what's constant, I believe, the players that get to the top 5% is the players that believe,
Hmm.
that really believe, like Djokovic, like Alcaraz, like
Yeah.
Sinner, like Sabalenka. They believe that when they step onto that court, they're going to find a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome, Paul. This has been amazing. Um, Last thing, what would you tell the next generation of dreamers?
Okay. A bit similar to what I mentioned just now. Look, it's you better get your act together early. It's going to be difficult because that gap is much greater and it gets greater by the decade than you and I when we came into tennis. Um, you need to build those four pillars of your game: the physical, technical, mental, strategic. They've all got to be um, given attention early and in equal doses. You can't the days of hitting a good ball and getting to 16 and 17 and then learning a little bit of strategy or whatever it is then, or starting to get into it's all gone. The advent of, for instance, the advent of colored ball um, programs, the Europeans now, they will dominate if other countries don't do a similar job. Like
What's
what I
that?
see now is that when I look at ITFs, and I see it even coming through to futures and challenges now, players are a lot better, and I think it's coloured ball because when you see a 6-year-old hitting a one-handed backhand a la Roger Federer, and they teach strategy in coloured ball, good programs. They teach strategy. They put them into competitions early, so they're getting the mental part underway. Europeans like the Dutch and the German, the Spanish, they've got tremendous colored ball programs so that when they do get a real ball in their hands, they've got all the strokes and they know where to hit it and they know it's like seasoned professionals coming in. And so junior tennis right now is extremely high standard. And that then filters into the pro and the guys who and girls who go further, you know, um, it's just the game is just so powerful and the athletes are so good now. Tennis is going to another level. You see Alcaraz and Sinner, just the physicality, but Sinner with his technique and both them with their strategic knowledge and you can't match them unless you do it early now. So countries, I mean, Thailand's one of them. Unless Thailand gets a decent coloured ball program, in the old days we had a couple of players, one in the top 10 and one in the top 20. We won't be able to do that. We can't do it today. That will not never happen again unless we develop a coloured ball program. So that, get those four pillars established. But probably the last one would be if you don't take on board that tennis is mostly mental, then you're probably going to go around in circles because the mind, and you're talking about self belief and all this. There's so many aspects of the mind, but if your mind's not in at the forefront of what you're training, every session must be a mental session. And sorry to rattle on here, Greg, but going all
No,
the
keep
way
going.
back when I was trying to develop this 3 a.m. training method, one of the things I began to say to myself is, well, sorry, there was a seminar I went to, and the speaker asked. We were all gathered in a room, and we were all from different sports. It was that sort of get together, and the speaker asked each of us how much mental training um, applied to our sports. And we all went round, and I think the lowest was 85%. Someone was 95. I think I said 90% for tennis. But then it was a setup because the next question was, how much time do you devote to mental training in your training sessions? And of course, we had to admit 10%, 15%. I think I might have said 15% to save face, but it was nothing near 15. I don't think I really did it. Or if I did it, it was always almost by default, accidental. And so from that moment on, I said to myself, I want to make, if tennis is 90%, which I'm saying to people, then I have to make my sessions 90% mental. And that's when everything changed.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. That was brilliant. I love
Right.
it. So many things to take away from this podcast. If you're training out there for whatever the tour, the whatever your club championship, you know, so much stuff. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate your time and your dedication to the sport and everything you've given. And I'm so grateful that I got a chance to speak with you.
Yeah, well, Greg, well done with your stuff too. I look at all your posts and stuff, and yeah, you've got a slightly different angle on things to anyone else as well. So, yeah, the more of you around, the better, because yeah, we tend to sometimes think all the same, and it's not good. So we need some outliers like you. It's really good.
Thank you. All right, Paul.
All
Have a
right.
great day. And then,
Thank you, Greg.
all right, I will stop the recording.